When I opened the door, the last thing I expected to see was two men in HOA uniforms glaring at me. Their faces were all sharp angles and hard lines, like they just stepped out of a bad action movie. My heart raced as I quickly glanced over my shoulder, ensuring my son was still in the living room, oblivious to the impending storm. "Mrs. Thompson," one of them said, his voice dripping with an unsettling mix of authority and condescension. "We're here to discuss some violations of community rules." I felt a rush of irritation. Violations? Are you serious? This isn't a corporate meeting. This is my home. I tried to inject some levity into the situation. "If you're looking for a multi-level marketing pitch, I'm fresh out of brochures." They didn't laugh. Instead, they held out a clipboard, like handing me the script of a horror film. "You can't just let your property fall into disarray. The lawn? It's a mess. The fence? Also a mess." Every word they uttered felt like a physical blow. My emotions swung wildly. Anger bubbled up inside, but a part of me felt defeated. Here I was, a single mom just trying to provide a decent life for my son, and these men were treating me like I was public enemy number one. "What do you want from me?" I spat out, desperate to regain my ground. They stayed stoic, which only fueled my frustration. I was speaking to them as if they might reply with a shred of humanity, but it was clear they were just enforcers of their petty rules. As they continued their tirade, something inside me snapped. I couldn't let them intimidate me, not in my own home. You may have your fancy rules, but I'm not going to lose my home over some trivial nonsense. Their eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I saw an opportunity. "You think you can just bully people because of a few dandelions?" I challenged. They didn't expect a fight, especially not from a single mother. Inside, I was torn. I hated confrontation, but they were pushing me into a corner. I could feel that familiar knot forming in my stomach. I didn't just want to protect my home. I needed to protect my son's sense of security, too. But then, I remembered the bodyguard my son insisted on having, a hulking figure who turned out to be more than just a protector. He was just out of sight, but I could call on him at any moment. The thought sparked a flicker of confidence. If these bullies thought they could intimidate me, they had another thing coming. "Listen," I said, my voice steadier now. "If you think you can intimidate me, you clearly don't know who you're messing with." Meanwhile, I could hear my son laughing with his friends inside, completely unaware of the drama unfolding at the door. It was a sweet sound, but also a reminder of what was at stake. This wasn't just about me, it was about him too. As I stood there, heart pounding, I realized that this fight wouldn't just be about property lines and fines. This was about standing up against bullies, and I was ready to take a stand. So, here I was, a single mom facing off against the HOA, and it was only just beginning. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm rising within me. I could almost feel the weight of the HOA's condescension pressing down, but this was my home, my sanctuary. I refused to back down. As the two representatives continued their list of grievances, I listened, but my mind was racing. I needed a plan. I couldn't just sit back and let them walk all over me. I glanced toward the living room again. My son was in there, laughing and playing, completely unaware of the imminent threat. What kind of world was I creating for him? A world where bullies in uniforms could dictate our lives based on trivial rules? No way. I had to show him strength, not just for him, but for myself as well. I imagined that bodyguard, a mountain of a man, waiting in the wings, ready to leap into action if I called. Would he really help, though? I hope so. "Why don't you come inside, and we can discuss this further?" I blurted out, surprising even myself with the suggestion. The two men exchanged glances, their eyebrows knitting together as if my invitation was puzzling. "Is that necessary?" one of them asked, sounding skeptical. "Absolutely," I said, injecting as much confidence as I could muster. "You need to see my home, not just your list." Surprisingly, they stepped inside, looking around as if they were assessing a crime scene. I led them to the living room, where my son's laughter echoed, a bright reminder of what I was fighting for. The moment the men saw him, their demeanor shifted. Their sharp expression softened slightly, but I wouldn't be fooled. "See, he's just a kid," I said, smiling at my son. He shouldn't have to be worried about whether his mom is being harassed by corporate bullies. One of them crossed his arms, but I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "We're just doing our jobs," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yeah, but your job shouldn't come at the expense of child happiness." I shot back, my heart pounding in my chest. I was steady now, fueled by the thought of how much my son deserved better. This wasn't how I envisioned my day would go, but here I was, standing up for what I believed in. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't alone. There were neighbors who felt the same way, people who had cowered under the weight of HOA regulations, afraid to speak up. "Listen," I continued, my voice unwavering. "I may not know all the rules, but I know this community is more than just properties and regulations. It's about the people in it, and we matter." The room was thick with tension, and I could feel the energy shift. I could tell they hadn't anticipated this confrontation. They were used to people backing down, not challenging them. Suddenly, I heard the door creak open behind me. It was him, my son's bodyguard, a wall of muscle and calm confidence, stepped inside as if he were making a grand entrance. "Is everything okay here?" he asked, his deep voice resonating through the room. The two HOA representatives stiffened. It was as if they were suddenly confronted with an unexpected reality check. I felt a rush of relief wash over me. I had backup now. "Yes, everything's fine," one of them stuttered, the bravado slipping. "Good," the bodyguard replied, turning his gaze toward me. "I'm just here to ensure that everything will be handled respectfully." The mood in the room shifted drastically. The men exchanged nervous glances, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in their heads. They weren't just facing me anymore. They were facing someone who could actually stand up to their intimidation. "Maybe it's time you reconsider how you interact with the residents of this community," I said, feeling emboldened. "We're not your enemies. We just want to live our lives without constant fear of harassment." In that moment, I knew I had turned the tide. It wouldn't end here, but I was ready to fight. It was just the beginning, and I could feel a sense of determination welling up inside me. I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was standing up for everyone who had ever felt powerless against bullies. "Let's discuss this like civilized people and find a way forward," I proposed, my heart racing with newfound hope. The battle wasn't over, but I was no longer fighting it alone. The atmosphere in the room shifted, thick with anticipation. I could sense the two HOA representatives reevaluating their approach. My heart pounded, not just from the adrenaline of standing my ground, but from a growing sense of empowerment. I wasn't alone in this, and I wasn't about to let them intimidate me again. "Let's sit down," I suggested, gesturing toward the living room couch while trying to maintain a calm demeanor. "I think we can find a solution that works for everyone." I desperately wanted to steer this conversation away from confrontational territory and into a path of understanding. As we settled onto the couch, my son's bodyguard remained standing, a protective figure looming in the background. His presence alone seemed to deter any further aggression from the two men. It was a subtle reminder that I was no longer just a single mother against the world. I was part community. "Okay," one of the representatives said, reluctantly taking the proffered seat. His stoic expression remained, but I noticed a slight relaxing of his shoulders. "We understand that the HOA can come off as stringent, but our rules are in place for a reason." "Yeah, a reason that often feels petty," I countered, trying to keep the conversation productive. "You're not just enforcing rules, you're affecting lives. My son deserves a home where he can play freely, without the threat of hair-splitting regulations." The second man opened his mouth to respond, but I continued, fueled by my passion. This isn't about dandelions or fence heights. It's about creating a community that's supportive and understanding. We all want our homes to look nice, but we also want our children to feel at home. The representatives exchanged glances, the tension in the air slowly dissipating. I could see cracks forming in their hardened exterior, and I knew I had to seize the moment. "Let me share a story," I said, leaning forward. "When I first moved here, I was excited. I envisioned my son playing in the neighborhood, making friends, and creating memories. But every time I turn around, there's a letter in my mailbox about some minor infraction. It feels suffocating." I looked at them, wanting them to understand. When new families move here, don't you think they should feel welcomed instead of intimidated? Why not help us improve our homes rather than penalize us? The two men exchanged glances again, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of understanding in their eyes. People aren't just properties or rules. They're human beings with stories. I see your point, one of them admitted, his tone shifting slightly. I think there are aspects of community that need revisiting. Maybe we can look into creating a better way to communicate. What about forming a committee? I suggested eagerly. Get input from residents. Let's talk about actual needs rather than enforcing overly strict regulations. My son's bodyguard shifted behind me, his stance still protective. And I can help facilitate those conversations, he said, his voice steady and reassuring. We want a community where people feel valued, not threatened. With that, I noticed a transformation in the room. The representatives appeared to be genuinely considering my words. Perhaps this was how change started, by putting a human face on rigid policies, by reminding them that we were all in this together. I think we can work together, the first representative said, cracking a tentative smile. Perhaps we need to approach things differently. Exactly, I exclaimed, feeling a surge of hope. This community can thrive if we focus on collaboration instead of punishment. It doesn't need to be us versus them. It can be us working together. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The conversation was no longer a war. It felt like we were forging a partnership. Having the bodyguard strength behind me had made a difference. But ultimately, it was my voice that helped shift the narrative from confrontation to collaboration. As we discussed potential changes, I felt a new sense of determination budding within me. If I could inspire the HOA to rethink their approach, perhaps I could help my neighbors too. I knew my struggles weren't isolated. There were others facing the same fears and frustrations. And in that moment, it hit me. This fight wasn't just for my own family. It was about creating a community where we could all thrive, where relationships were built on understanding rather than fear. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to walk it. Together, we began to map out a plan for how we could work together, finding common ground, discussing regulations, and building a community that truly felt like home. The momentum was shifting, and it felt invigorating. This was just the beginning. The HOA might have come to intimidate me, but now it seemed we were all standing on the same side, ready to make a change. With every passing moment, I felt the weight of tension lift from the room. As we laid the groundwork for a new approach, I realized how critical this conversation had become, not just in my own family, but for everyone in the community who felt unseen and unheard. We could host a community meeting, I suggested, feeling the excitement bubble within me. Invite everyone, not just the HOA members. Let's create a space where residents can express their concerns and share their ideas. A think tank for our neighborhood. The two HOA representatives exchanged nods, their expressions indicating they were beginning to warm up to the idea. It was small, but it was a start, one I wasn't going to let slip away. I like that idea, said the first representative, a hint of enthusiasm creeping into his voice. We could schedule in the community center, maybe even provide refreshments to encourage participation. Yes, I replied eagerly. People will feel more inclined to attend if they see a genuine effort to include them. It's essential that we create an environment where everyone feels comfortable voicing their opinions. Can I help? My son piped up from the side, his wide eyes flickering with excitement. I want to be part of it, too. Can we have games or activities for kids if they come? The bodyguard chuckled softly, looking down at my son with appreciation. That's a fantastic idea, buddy. If you can make it fun, more families will come. Plus, the parents will appreciate having a little entertainment for their kids while they share their thoughts. The two representatives nodded again, visibly relaxing further. It might just work, said the second representative. Getting people together can break down barriers. We've noticed a disconnect over the years, and that's something we need to address. As the conversation unfolded, we discussed logistics and potential activities for the meeting. I felt energized, with every concept brought to life, feeding the growing flames of hope in my heart. This wasn't just about the HOA anymore. It was about rebuilding a community feeling fractured and overlooked. I'll create flyers to distribute in the neighborhood, I said, jotting down notes to ensure we had everything covered. And I'd be happy to lead the meeting. After all, it was my idea. Count me in to help, my son's bodyguard chimed in. I can help set up the space and manage the kids' activities, too. My experience with security will help ensure that everything goes smoothly. Excitement surged through me as I looked at the faces around me, both the HOA representatives and my son's bodyguard. In harmony and collaboration, we were all coming together, a rarity in this tightly knit community that felt increasingly divided by regulations. Let's schedule the meeting for next week, I suggested. This will give us time to prepare, and we can also gather feedback beforehand. People love to be heard, and this is our chance to show them that the HOA is here to support, not suppress. As the details fell into place, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come since the initial confrontation at my doorstep. The people who had come to intimidate me seemed willing to embrace change now, ready to engage with their constituents in a meaningful way. After finalizing the meeting details, I expressed my gratitude to the representatives. Thank you for being open to this. I know change can be difficult, but sometimes all it takes is a little push to see a new perspective. They nodded in agreement, and I saw a genuine sincerity in their eyes. For the first time, I felt like we were on the same team, aiming for the same goal, creating an inclusive community where everyone felt they belonged. As we wrapped up our planning session, I felt a rush of pride and determination. This wasn't just a small victory. It was a beginning of something greater. The community meeting had the potential to ignite a movement within our neighborhood, and who knew what other changes it might spur. That evening, as I watched my son playing and laughing, I felt grateful. We weren't just defending our small slice of the world anymore. We were taking steps to improve it for everyone. Can we make posters for the meeting? My son asked, a burst of enthusiasm evident in his voice. I want everyone to know how fun it will be. Absolutely, I replied, grinning broadly. Let's make this an event we'll all remember. And so, as we gathered supplies and began designing colorful posters, my heart brimmed with hope. The future felt brighter, filled with possibilities, and I knew for sure that this was just the start of a strong new chapter for our community. The days leading up to the community meeting were a flurry of activity. My son and I transformed the living room into a mini command center, filled with paper, markers, and poster boards. Together, we spent hours crafting colorful signs filled with cheerful messages that invited people to join us. Let's make our community better together, one poster proclaimed, while another read, Your voice matters. Each evening, as we worked side by side, I felt a sense of purpose wash over me. My son's enthusiasm was infectious, and it reminded me of the dreams I had when I first moved to this neighborhood. A safe haven for families where everyone looked out for one another. On the day of the meeting, I felt a blend of excitement and anxiety bubbling within me. I worked hard to create an atmosphere of openness and inclusivity, but would it resonate with community? As I set up the community center with the help of my son and his bodyguard, I hoped the warm decor and snacks would put everyone at ease. Balloons bobbed on the ceiling and banners hung brightly across the entrance, the cheerful colors promising a welcoming environment. You think anyone will come? My son asked, his voice a mix of hope and uncertainty as he arranged the snacks on the table. Of course they will, I reassured him, though I couldn't shake my own nerves. People want to be heard. Sometimes they just need an invitation. As the start time approached, I glanced around, trying to focus on the positives. The hard work had gathered momentum, and the community center was filled with laughter and chatter as families arrived. Children dashed about, already settling into the activities we had organized. Finally, as the clock struck 7, I took a deep breath and stepped up to the front of the room. I could see familiar faces from the neighborhood, along with a few new ones I hadn't recognized before. The room buzzed with anticipation, and I felt a flicker of nerves in my stomach. Thank you all for being here tonight. I began, forcing myself to speak clearly. I'm so grateful to see so many of you come together. This meeting is about us, about building connections and sharing ideas to make our community the best it can be. Each of you has a voice, and I want to hear it. The crowd murmured in agreement, and my heart swelled. It was happening. They were here, willing to engage in a dialogue instead of retreating into silence. Tonight, we want to discuss how we can support each other and make improvements that reflect our needs as residents. We'll also talk about the HOA's policies and how we can collaborate to create fairness and understanding moving forward. I continued, watching as people nodded in interest. Next to me, my son's bodyguard engaged with the children in the back, leading games that kept them entertained while we talked. His presence provided a reassuring energy, calming my nerves as I turned my attention back to crowd. After I laid out the agenda, I opened the floor for discussion. Does anyone have a topic they'd like to start with? I asked, my heart racing. Surprisingly, a hand shot up from the middle of the room. It was Mrs. Hawkins, an elderly neighbor who I knew had lived in the community for decades. I'd like to talk about the community garden, she said, her voice vibrant despite her years. It used to be a gathering spot for us, but now it's been neglected. We could revitalize it and even create a potluck event around it. I felt a rush of excitement. That's a wonderful idea. I replied, grateful for the immediate feedback. A community garden can reflect our shared efforts and provide a space for gatherings, not just for fresh vegetables. One by one, voices began to rise from crowd, discussing everything from the state of the parks to improving security and neighborhood watch initiatives. I listened, encouraging everyone to share their thoughts. It was a beautiful cacophony of ideas, each one more compelling than the last. As the conversation flowed, I felt like I was watching the community awaken. Walls were coming down, and we were no longer just residents bound by rules. We were neighbors with hopes, dreams, and a shared desire for a brighter future. After a lively discussion, we moved toward creating actionable steps. Together, we formed committees based on the ideas shared that night: garden revitalization, community events to strengthen connections, and a reevaluation of current regulations by the HOA to better reflect our collective needs. As we wrapped up the meeting, I felt a sense of accomplishment wash over me. This had been more than just a gathering. It was a turning point for our community. The excitement rippled through the room as we planned our next meeting to review our progress and ensure everyone remained engaged. I can't believe how many people turned out, my son exclaimed as we packed up, beaming with joy. I know. You helped make it happen. I smiled back at him. You brought so much energy and positivity to this, and so did everyone else. As we walked out of the community center, I felt lighter and filled with hope. This wasn't just about changing rules or enforcing regulations. It was about creating a warm, welcoming home for all of us. Together, we were forging a new path toward a community that thrived on connection, understanding, and collaboration. It was just beginning, but I knew, with every bit of effort we put forth, that we were building something lasting, an unshakable bond among neighbors who cared for each other. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. As the weeks unfolded following the community meeting, a palpable shift took place within our neighborhood. What once felt like an insurmountable divide between residents and the HOA transformed into a collaborative spirit, fueled by our shared ambitions and mutual respect. It wasn't just about the rules anymore. It was about creating a vibrant, interconnected community. The revitalization of the community garden became our first major project. Thanks to Mrs. Hawkins' enthusiasm and the dedication of several volunteers, we held a weekend event to clear out weeds and plant new flowers and vegetables. Families brought their children, and laughter echoed through the air as we worked side by side. It was incredible to see neighbors who had barely exchanged pleasantries in the past now chatting and laughing as they dug into the soil, planting seeds for both their gardens and friendships. My son and I took on the role of cheerleaders for the effort, setting up a refreshment stand filled with lemonade and cookies. Watching the community come alive that day filled my heart with joy. My son beamed at everyone who approached, proudly offering them a cookie and proclaiming, "This is the best garden ever." After a long day of hard work, we stood back, admiring what we had accomplished together. The garden was lush with potential, but just as important was the newfound spirit of cooperation. Meanwhile, the discussions around HOA regulations were ongoing. The representatives had agreed to meet quarterly with our community committees, ensuring that our voices were heard in the decision-making process. It felt revolutionary. Neighbors were no longer alienated. They were part of real dialogue. One evening, While preparing dinner, I noticed a flyer tucked under my door. It was an invitation to a neighborhood potluck planned at the newly revived community garden. My heart soared with excitement. Events like these could become the cornerstone of our community, reinforcing connections and building a sense of belonging. On the day of the potluck, I baked my famous lasagna, careful to prepare a large tray so everyone could enjoy it. My son helped set up, hanging up colorful streamers and arranging blankets on the grass for families to sit on. When the potluck began, the garden was filled with an array of dishes that represented various cultures and tastes: tacos, curry, stuffed peppers, casseroles, and so much more. Children darted around the garden while parents mingled and shared stories about their lives and experiences. It was a beautiful symphony of laughter, voices, and communal enjoyment. The HOA representatives were in attendance too, mingling with residents and even serving some food as a gesture of goodwill. "Glad you could make it," I said to one of them, smiling. "How do you think it's going?" "It's going wonderfully," he replied, visibly relaxed and enjoying the atmosphere. "It's nice to see everyone getting along and working together. We should have more of these events." "I agree. Community matters more than rules," I replied, and we shared a moment of understanding. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the garden transformed under fairy lights strung through the trees. A neighbor stepped up to the small gathering, holding guitar. "Who wants to join me for some music?" he called out. Within moments, a small crowd formed, eager to sing along to his cheerful tunes. I glanced over at my son, dancing joyfully with the other kids, and I felt a surge of gratitude for what we had achieved. This was the spirit of the neighborhood I had envisioned, brought to life by the tenacity of so many. That evening became a defining moment for our community. Conversations flowed, relationships blossomed, and laughter echoed into the night. People who had felt isolated began to forge connections, forming friendships that would last beyond these gatherings. As I tucked my son into bed later that night, his eyes shone with excitement. "Mom, that was the best day ever. Can we do it again?" "Absolutely," I replied, brushing his hair back. "This is just the beginning. We're building something special, and it's going to take all of us to keep it going." The next morning, I awoke to a flood of ideas coursing through my mind. I envisioned book clubs, game nights, and holiday celebrations, opportunities for residents to gather and strengthen their bonds. With each idea, I felt invigorated by a sense of purpose. We were creating a community that didn't just exist within the confines of regulations, but thrived in connection. As I sipped my coffee and stared out at the garden, now buzzing with life, I couldn't help but smile. The path toward rebuilding our neighborhood had begun as a confrontation, but it had evolved into a collaborative effort that breathed new life into every corner. I was ready to lead the next steps, reaching out to volunteers, brainstorming new event ideas, and continuing the dialogue with the HOA representatives. Change was not just possible, it was happening. With each gathering, we were not just growing plants in our community garden. We were planting seeds of unity, resilience, and hope for the future. And in those moments, I was reminded that together, we could nurture a community that thrived not only on policies, but on compassion, understanding, and shared joy. It was a journey that would take time and effort, but I was ready, and this community was worth every moment. As the days turned into weeks, the sense of community that had blossomed in our neighborhood began to strengthen even further. Each new event brought more residents together, and the energy was palpable. New friendships formed, and old grievances faded away, replaced by a prevailing spirit of kindness and collaboration. One sunny Saturday morning, I decided to take the initiative to organize a community cleanup day. The goal was to not only beautify our shared spaces, but also to encourage residents to take pride in their surroundings. I was inspired by the enthusiasm from the potluck, where so many had come together so readily. I designed colorful flyers and distributed them throughout the neighborhood, inviting everyone to join us next Saturday for a morning of teamwork, laughter, and camaraderie. My son eagerly helped me with the posters, drawing vibrant images of smiling suns, flowers, and children cleaning up the streets. As the day approached, excitement buzzed through the air. I organized several teams to cover different areas of the neighborhood, ensuring we could tackle our tasks efficiently. When the day arrived, trucks filled with supplies, including gloves, trash bags, and recycling bins, adorned our community center's parking lot. Residents gathered, ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work. My heart swelled with pride at the sight. Children wore bright smiles, jogging around with their parents, while neighbors greeted one another, building on the relationships forged during previous events. "Are you ready?" I asked my son, who bounced on his toes with excitement. "More than ready," he exclaimed. "I want to find the biggest piece of trash ever." As we split into teams, I realized I was not just leading a cleanup. I was witnessing the tangible transformation of our community. One couple launched into a discussion about creating a recycling initiative. Another group talked about planting wildflowers along the sidewalks. And a few teenagers proposed an ongoing youth volunteer program to keep the neighborhood looking its best. The energy was infectious. As we worked, we shared stories, laughter, and ideas for ways we could enhance our living spaces together. I stopped to chat with one resident, Mr. Thompson, who had lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years. He shared anecdotes about past community efforts and the joy he felt seeing our neighborhood come alive again. "It's been a while since I've seen such spirit here," he remarked, wiping sweat from his brow. "You've breathed new life into this place." "I can't take all the credit," I replied, gesturing around us. "It's everyone here who is making a difference." After several hours of hard work, we stood back to admire our efforts. The neighborhood looked transformed. Litter was cleared, sidewalks were swept, and park benches gleamed. Children played nearby, having spent the afternoon gathering small treasures in the ground, a polka-dot rock here, a colorful leaf there, their laughter echoing through the now pristine streets. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden light over our hard work, we set up a picnic spread on one of the clean parks to celebrate. Everyone brought snacks and beverages to share. In that moment of togetherness, it felt as if we had accomplished more than just a cleanup. We had fortified the bonds that would hold our community together. Just as I served a slice of my lasagna to a neighbor, I spotted the HOA representatives arriving. They joined us, their faces brightening at the sight of so many engaged residents. It was a testament to the change we had been cultivating together. One of them approached me, a smile on his face. "You know, it's been wonderful to witness this transformation. You've really sparked something special here," he said, gesturing to the crowd enjoying the picnic. "I think we all have. It's amazing what can happen when people come together." I replied, grateful to see the HOA members embracing their role rather than imposing regulations without understanding our needs. As the evening wore on, we all shared stories, enjoyed our food, and discussed the exciting plans for the future, including more community events and initiatives to keep our neighborhood thriving. I noticed a sense of ownership people were taking over their spaces. No longer were we just residents. We were co-creators of our community. That night, as I helped my son wind down before bed, I noticed how tired but happy he looked. "Today was the best," he said, yawning. "Can we do it again?" "Absolutely," I whispered, tucking him in. "This is just the start. We're going to keep building our community together, one event at a time." As I walked out of his room, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. We had come so far from that initial confrontation with the HOA. It was no longer about standing up against rules. It was about creating a neighborhood where everyone felt valued and heard. But as I lay in bed that night, drifting off, I pondered the challenges still ahead. With increased engagement might come new discussions and even disagreements. How will we navigate those complexities? Would the compromises we forge be strong enough to withstand the inevitable challenges? I fell asleep, determined and eager for the next step in this journey, aware that together we could face any obstacles that lay ahead. The heartbeat of our community was strong, and as long as we nurture with understanding and collaboration, I believe we could build something lasting and beautiful. Together, we would shape a neighborhood that thrived not just on rules and regulations, but on a foundation of trust, support, and shared dreams. The momentum in our community felt unstoppable as we moved from one event to the next. The community cleanup day had been a resounding success, and enthusiasm for our neighborhood initiatives continued to swell. People eagerly shared ideas for more gatherings, movie nights, seasonal festivals, and even a book exchange. I was overjoyed to see my vision for a vibrant community taking shape. However, as I reveled in the warmth and camaraderie of our neighborhood, I was also acutely aware of the challenges we had yet to face. While collective momentum was strong, Not everyone was enthusiastic about the changes. A faction of residents who preferred the old ways had begun to express their displeasure in quieter corners, voicing concerns about the HOA's willingness to bend rules and allow such loose interpretations of community standards. I first sensed trouble when I received an anonymous letter in my mailbox. It was filled with complaints about noise levels during our gatherings and suggestions that we were disregarding the very regulations that were meant to preserve our neighborhood's aesthetics. The writer's rigid perspective gripped my heart with unease, reminding me that change was not universally welcomed. Determined to address the whispers before they crescendoed into a larger conflict, I decided it was time to confront these concerns head-on. I organized an open forum, inviting everyone to discuss their views, both positive and negative. It was essential to create a space where every resident felt heard, especially those who might have reservations about our direction. As I prepared for the forum, I grappled with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Naturally, I wanted to emphasize our successes while fostering understanding around differing perspectives. I hoped to channel any dissent into constructive dialogue, rather than allowing it to fester. On the day of the forum, the community center bustled with activity. Chairs were set up in a circle, and I could feel the energy in the room shift as neighbors arrived. Some eager to voice their opinions, others perhaps reluctantly pulling in their chairs. After all, we had built an ethos of cooperation. Now, it was time to put to a real test. Thank you all for coming. I began, my voice steady but my heart racing. We've made significant strides in revitalizing our community, but I want to hear from everyone. It's crucial we all feel we have a stake in this. The air was thick with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. I could sense there were those who had reservations. A few moments of silence hung in the air before Mr. Jensen, a longtime resident known for his bluntness, finally spoke up. I appreciate the efforts everyone has made, but I have to voice my concern, he said, looking around the circle. This community has always had rules for a reason. They're there to maintain order and protect our property values. It feels like those of us who care about those rules have been drowned out. Nods of agreement peppered the room, and as he continued, I took steady breaths to remain calm. There's a difference between enforcing standards and being overly rigid. I believe we can strike a balance, I said. I want to understand your concerns better. Can we find a way to maintain our values while allowing for community growth? As the discussion unfolded, it became a blend of frustrations and aspirations. Some voiced their fears that our gatherings bordered on chaos and might disrupt the serenity of our neighborhood. Others expressed their worries about the HOA losing control amid our newfound freedom. I understand your concerns, and I want to assure you that we're not dismissing the regulations entirely, I replied, looking to foster a sense of understanding. What if we form a committee to discuss possible adjustments to the existing regulations? This way, we can ensure that every perspective is taken into account. The suggestion sparked interest in the crowd. Several people leaned in, realizing that we had a possible path forward. It was a recognition that we didn't have to be at odds. Rather, we could collaborate to create an environment that cherished both tradition and innovation. After a lengthy discussion, we concluded the meeting with a shared sense of purpose. While not all opinions were reconciled, the dialogue had opened doors. I felt encouraged as people began to connect, discussing their ideas separately while absorbing each other's viewpoints. Let's plan a follow-up meeting in a month, I suggested, and keep communicating our ideas. However, I want to create opportunities to celebrate our initiatives as well. Maybe we can have a neighborhood talent show, an event where everyone can showcase their gifts. Laughter erupted and the mood shifted. It was evident that, despite differing opinions, there was a common desire to celebrate who we were as a community. We left the forum with a resolution to establish an open channel of communication and a commitment to remain engaged, making strides toward inclusivity. As I walked home, I felt a wave of relief but also a renewed sense of determination. Change was never easy, and navigating different perspectives would require patience and empathy. Our community was growing, and with growth would come challenges. Yet I knew we possessed the essential ingredients to overcome those hurdles, a shared commitment to understanding and a foundation of trust that was only getting stronger. The following days buzzed with energy as ideas for the talent show blossomed. Neighbors expressed their eagerness to participate, whether playing music, sharing stories, or showcasing their artistic talents. Children eagerly designed posters. Adults coordinated performances, and the anticipation was palpable. On the day of the talent show, the atmosphere in the community garden radiated excitement. Families filled the space, snacks and refreshments spread across tables, and the sun cast a warm glow over the gathering. As the show commenced, we witnessed an array of incredible talent. From singing and poetry readings to impromptu skits that had everyone rolling with laughter. Moments of joy echoed through the garden, dispelling the tension that had lingered since the forum. What I had hoped for had come to fruition, a vibrant tapestry of our community, woven together by shared dreams and creativity. Standing in that beautiful garden, surrounded by laughter and applause, I knew we had become something more than just residents in a neighborhood. We were a family. This talent show, birthed from a need for understanding, became our rallying point. It was a reminder that no matter the differences in our opinions, we would always have a capacity to connect through the universal language of creativity. As night fell and families packed up, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Together, we had embraced our journey toward a collaborative future. Each gathering brought us closer, reaffirming that love and connection would always triumph over division. And as I watched my son share a hug with a new friend, I realized that regardless of the challenges that lay ahead, we would face them together. The journey continued. And as long as we held on to our commitment to listen and nurture our shared roots, I believed our community would flourish. We were already on the path, and together we could weather any storm.